He was the kind of man people rarely noticed. He worked long hours, spoke little, and never asked for attention. To neighbors, he was just someone who came home late, fixed broken things quietly, and kept his head down. No one knew what he carried inside him. No one knew that every calm day he lived was built on years of fear, regret, and silent protection. He died on an ordinary evening. No warning. No long illness. One moment he was alive, and the next, he was gone. The news came like a cold wind, sudden and sharp. Those who knew him felt shock, but not surprise. He always lived as if time was borrowed, as if he was preparing for an ending he expected. The woman who stood at the center of his life felt the loss differently. She had shared a roof with him, meals with him, and long silences that often felt heavier than words. She knew him better than most, yet she also knew how much he kept hidden. His death did not only bring grief, it brought questions. She remembered how he never spoke about his past. If she asked about his childhood, he would change the subject. If she asked about old friends, he would smile faintly and say they drifted apart. There were no old photos, no stories told with laughter, no family visits. It was as if his life had started only a few years before she met him. At first she accepted it. Everyone has pain they don't want to reopen. She told herself that love did not need explanations. But after his death, the quiet felt louder. The empty chair across the table felt like it was hiding something. The house felt unfamiliar, as if it belonged to a stranger. During the funeral, she noticed things that didn't make sense. A man she had never seen before stood at a distance, watching quietly. He did not come forward, did not speak to anyone, and left before the service ended. Later, she saw an envelope placed among the flowers, with no name on it. Inside was a short note, written in a careful hand. It said only one line. He kept his promise until the end. She read it again and again, trying to understand. What promise? To whom? In the days that followed, she began sorting through his belongings. He had never owned much. A few sets of clothes, old tools, worn books, and a small desk in the corner of the room. Most drawers were neat and empty, too neat. It felt like he had already removed anything important long ago. Then she found the locked drawer. It was the only thing in the house that had ever been locked. She remembered asking him about it once. He had paused, then said it held work papers and nothing worth seeing. His voice had been calm, but his hands had shaken slightly. She had noticed but chose not to push. Now, with him gone, the drawer felt heavier than wood and metal. She struggled with guilt before opening it. Part of her felt she was breaking a boundary he had drawn for a reason. But another part of her felt he had left it behind for her to find. Inside were papers tied with a string, an old phone that no longer worked, and a thin notebook with pages yellowed by time. The first few pages were empty. Then the writing began. The words were simple. Short sentences. Dates written carefully at the top of each page. They spoke of fear, of watching over someone from afar, of choosing silence over truth. One sentence appeared again and again in different forms. If I speak, she will not be safe. Her hands trembled as she read. The word she appeared many times, but no name followed. Whoever this she was, he had built his life around protecting her. That much was clear as she turned the pages. Memories began to surface. Times when he insisted on moving suddenly. Times when he refused to give an address to anyone. Times when he reacted strongly to news stories about missing children or broken families. At the time, she thought he was just sensitive. Now, she wondered if he was remembering something he lived through. One entry stopped her breath. I saw her today. She is taller now. She laughed. She does not know me. Her heart raced. This was not just a memory. This was a living person. Someone he had been watching. Someone he loved deeply, but stayed away from. That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the house. She realized something painful and strange at the same time. The man she loved had lived two lives. One beside her and one in the shadows, built around a secret he never trusted himself to share. She felt anger rise. Why didn't he tell her? Why did he carry everything alone? But anger quickly turned into sadness. He must have believed that silence was the only way to keep everyone safe, including her. The next morning, she returned to the notebook. Near the back, she found a folded piece of paper. On it was an address written in shaky ink. No explanation. Just a place. She stared at it for a long time. Fear and curiosity fought inside her. She knew that once she went there, her life would change. She would no longer be protected by his silence. But she also knew she could not ignore it. Not after everything she had read as she closed the notebook. One thought stayed with her. He did not die as a quiet man with nothing to hide. He died protecting a secret that was still alive. And whatever waited at that address was the truth he never had the courage or the freedom to speak. The morning she decided to follow the address felt heavy. Every step felt like moving through water. She tried to imagine what she would find, but her mind could only circle around the possibilities. Would it be someone alive? Someone hurt? Or a truth so strange that it could shatter the memory of the man she loved? She left the house quietly, careful not to disturb the feeling of emptiness that clung to every corner. The streets were calm. The city moved in its usual rhythm, unaware of the secrets hidden inside quiet homes. She clutched the folded paper tightly, as if holding it too loosely might let the secret slip away forever. The journey to the address was long. She felt a mix of fear and hope growing with every turn. Memories of the man haunted her thoughts. She remembered the way he always watched the world with caution, as if danger could appear around any corner. She realized now that his careful steps in life were not just habits, they were lessons. Hints to the life he had built for someone he loved. When she arrived, she saw an old, modest building. The walls were faded, the paint peeling in some places. It looked like a place where the world had slowed down, where life moved quietly away from the noise of busy streets. She paused at the gate, unsure whether she had the courage to step inside. Her heart pounded, not just from fear, but from a strange anticipation, as if she were about to meet someone she already knew. She pushed the gate slowly. It creaked like an old whisper, announcing her arrival. The garden was small, overgrown in some places, but still full of life. Birds chirped as if they were guarding the place, watching every step she took. She felt watched, not with suspicion, but with attention, as if the place itself understood her purpose. She rang the bell and waited. Time stretched. Every second felt like a question she was not ready to answer. And then the door opened. A woman stood there, not a stranger. Her eyes were the same as the man's eyes. The same quiet strength, the same depth that hid so much. She was young, perhaps just in her 20s, and her expression was a mix of surprise and caution. She had lived her life here, in this small home, unaware of the man who had protected her from afar. The woman in front of her was the daughter. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Words were impossible. The past was heavy, and the truth was waiting in silence. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she tried to hold them back. This was not a moment for tears. It was a moment for connection, for understanding. "Do you know me?" she asked finally. Her voice was soft, hesitant. The woman shook her head slowly. "No, I don't. But I feel something. I don't know why." She smiled faintly, because she understood. She felt the same. It was the echo of a life lived in secret, a life protected by love and fear. He cared for you," she said, her voice catching. "For all of you, actually. He kept you safe." The daughter blinked, trying to process. "He who?" The woman took a deep breath. "Your father, the man I knew. He loved you more than anything." That was all it took to open a door in her mind. She had always wondered why her life had been so strange at times. Why people moved in and out quickly. Why her mother had disappeared. Why she had felt a presence watching over her in certain moments, guiding her steps without anyone telling her. All those questions found a shape now, a form that made sense. They sat down inside the small living room. The furniture was simple, but it had a warmth that made it feel alive. The woman carefully unfolded the papers from the notebook, showing the letters and entries her late husband had written. Each page was a story of struggle, hope, and quiet courage. Each page was a piece of a life she had never seen. The daughter read them slowly, pausing to take in every word. She saw the careful attention, the sacrifices, the moments of fear and hope intertwined. And then she looked up, tears in her eyes. He did all this. For me? She whispered. Yes, she said. Every decision he made, every silence, every step back he took, it was for you. He didn't tell me because he believed some truths were too dangerous to share, even with the people who loved him most. For hours, they talked. Carefully, slowly, memories surfaced, not the daughter's, but the father's. Stories of a man who had fought to keep her alive, even when it meant living in loneliness. Stories of quiet bravery, of choosing to stay in the shadows so she could live freely in the light. And with every word, the bond between them grew, fragile yet unbreakable. She realized something important. Love does not always mean closeness. Sometimes love is silence. Sometimes love is distance. And sometimes love is the courage to carry a secret that no one else can bear. The man had chosen this path, not for glory or recognition, but for her life, for her safety. That night, they walked through the garden. The air was cool, filled with the scent of flowers and grass. The daughter paused, touching a leaf gently. She looked at the woman beside her, feeling a strange mix of anger and gratitude. Why didn't he tell me? She asked softly. He wanted to, the woman said, but he thought it was safer for you to not know. Every choice he made was to protect you. He could not risk losing you. They stayed in silence for a while, letting the weight of the truth settle. Slowly, the daughter began to understand. Slowly, the pieces of her life started to fit together. The strange gaps, the moments of protection, the shadows that had always seemed to follow hurt, was all him. Always him. Over the next few days, the woman and the daughter continued to uncover more. Photographs, letters, small mementos hidden carefully. Each one told a story, each one revealed a truth. And with every discovery, the daughter grew stronger. More connected to the father she had never known, more grateful for the life he had fought to protect. She realized that she had inherited more than just his blood. She had inherited his courage, his careful attention to life, his quiet way of loving without asking for recognition. And she felt a deep, unspoken bond with the woman who had been by his side, carrying her own grief and love, holding on to the secret that had protected them both. For the first time in years, the daughter felt complete. Not because the past was fixed, but because she finally understood the truth. The man who had died protecting a secret had given her a gift no one else could. The gift of life lived safely. The gift of love hidden in silence. The gift of a legacy she was only beginning to understand. The days after the first meeting passed slowly, filled with quiet moments of thought and reflection. The woman and the daughter spent hours looking through the father's notebook, letters, and old photographs. Each page revealed another layer of the life he had lived in secret. Each photo told a story, a memory captured in time, a glimpse of love and protection that had been hidden from the world. The daughter began to piece together the man her father had been. She learned of the struggles he faced, the threats he had quietly managed, and the moments of danger he had kept hidden from her. Every word, every entry made her understand him more, not just as a father she had never met, but as a man who had sacrificed everything to keep her safe. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the small window, the daughter picked up a letter that had been folded neatly. The handwriting was familiar, the same careful hand she had seen in the notebook. She hesitated before opening it, afraid of what she might find. Then she read, I cannot tell her yet. She must grow strong first. The world is not ready for the truth. I have to protect her from those who would harm her. If I speak too soon, all I have done will be for nothing. I must stay silent. I must stay away. Her hands trembled as she read the words. The man she had never met had lived every moment thinking of her. The choices he had made, the distance he had kept, the silence he had held, or acts of love. She realized then that every unexplained absence, every sudden move, Every mysterious disappearance in her early life had been for her safety. Her father had chosen to bear the pain of being unknown to her rather than risk her life for freedom. The woman beside her saw the tears on the daughter's face. She gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "He loved you," she said softly. "Every step he took was to protect you. That's why he never came to you. He couldn't risk it." The daughter nodded, wiping her eyes. She wanted to ask so many questions, but she didn't know where to start. She didn't understand everything yet, but she felt the depth of the love that had protected her all these years. As the days passed, they discovered more. A series of photographs showed a young girl playing in a park, laughing, completely unaware that someone was always watching over her. Letters from unknown people hinted at dangers that had once been near, threats that her father had quietly managed to remove without ever being seen. Each discovery painted a clearer picture. He had lived in shadows, moving and working quietly, always with her safety in mind. The daughter began to understand why he had kept his silence. There were powerful forces in the past he had dealt with, people who might have wanted to harm her if they knew the truth. He had chosen to remain invisible, to live in quiet anonymity so that she could grow up without fear. His absence had been his protection. The woman watched her realize these truths, feeling both sadness and pride. The daughter was growing into the understanding that her father had loved her from afar, had made the hardest choices a parent could make. And she began to feel a connection to him even though he was gone, that was stronger than anything she had known before. One afternoon, the daughter asked a question that had been lingering in her mind. "Why didn't he tell me about you?" The woman sighed. "He wanted to. He wanted to tell you everything. But he knew that the more people knew, the greater the risk. He trusted me to watch over you, too. We both knew that silence was the only way to keep you safe." The daughter nodded slowly. She began to see the man in her mind, not just as a father who had been absent, but as someone who had carried a weight too heavy for one person alone. She saw his courage, his patience, and his deep love that had guided every decision he made. Later, they found a small box tucked away in a corner of the house. Inside were items that belonged to him: a watch, a pair of gloves, a small notebook filled with sketches and notes. Each item was a reminder of the life he had lived quietly, a life full of thoughtfulness and care. The daughter picked up the watch and ran her fingers over it. It felt heavy in her hands, not just because of the metal, but because of the weight of the history it carried. She looked at the woman beside her and spoke softly. "I wish I could have known him. I wish I could have told him that I understand, that I forgive him for the silence, and that I love him too." The woman smiled, tears in her eyes. "He knew you would. He knew that one day you would understand. That's why he left these things, these letters, these memories, so that when the time came, you could finally know him." In the weeks that followed, the daughter began to learn more about her father's life. She spoke with people who had known him long ago, friends who remembered a kind, quiet man who had disappeared without explanation. Each conversation added another piece to the puzzle. Helping her see the full picture of the sacrifices he had made, she discovered the strength in the choices he had made, the courage it took to stay away, and the love that had never wavered. And she began to understand that love is not always about presence. Sometimes it is about protection, about making impossible choices, about carrying the burden of truth alone. As she sat in the quiet of the small home one evening, reading through yet another letter, she realized that her life had been guided by her father's silent hand all along. Every safe moment, every chance at happiness, had been shaped by his care. And though she had not known him in life, she felt his presence now more clearly than ever. The notebook contained one final message near the end, written in a hand that trembled slightly, as if the man had known the end was near. It read, "I hope one day she will know the truth and understand why I could not be there. I hope she will forgive me and see that every choice, every step, was made with her in mind. I will love her always, even if she does not know me." The daughter folded the letter gently, feeling a deep ache in her chest. She had found him at last not in life, but in the traces he left behind. She had found his love, his courage, and his sacrifice. And she knew that even though he had been silent, even though she had not known him, she would carry his legacy forward in that quiet moment. She understood the man her father had been, a protector, a silent hero, a man who had given everything without ever asking for recognition. She felt a connection to him stronger than words, a bond that could not be broken by time, absence, or secrecy. And she knew that she would never forget him. She would honor him by living a life that reflected the love, courage, and sacrifice he had given so quietly, so selflessly. All these years, the days turned into weeks as the daughter settled into the quiet house that had been her father's last home. She moved carefully among his belongings, touching objects that had been carefully hidden, reading letters that had never been sent, and piecing together a life that was full of hidden courage and quiet love. Every corner of the house seemed to hold a memory, a hint of the man who had lived and died to protect her. She began to explore the world her father had shielded her from. There were documents that revealed threats he had quietly removed, people who had tried to interfere in her life long before she was even aware of them. She learned that he had faced danger repeatedly, often alone, and that his careful movements and sudden absences had been calculated to keep her safe. She began to see the depth of his love and the weight of the responsibility he had carried. The woman who had been by his side helped guide her through the details, sharing what she had known and what she had kept secret to honor his wishes. They spoke long into the night, discussing the father's courage, the challenges he had faced, and the choices he had made. The daughter listened carefully, absorbing each story, each explanation, each insight into the man who had sacrificed everything for her. One afternoon, the daughter found a small box in the attic. It was dusty and old, the wood worn smooth from years of handling. Inside were mementos from her father's past, letters, photographs, a small locket, and a few pieces of jewelry. She held each item carefully, feeling the presence of a man she had never known yet loved deeply. The objects spoke to her in a way that words could not, telling stories of devotion, hardship, and quiet heroism. As she explored the box, she discovered a series of letters addressed to her, written over the years but never delivered. In each one, her father had shared his thoughts, fears, and hopes. He wrote about the dangers that had forced him to stay away, about the sacrifices he had made, and about the love that had never wavered. Reading them, she felt a mixture of sadness and gratitude. He had given her everything without ever asking for recognition or thanks. The daughter began to understand that her father's silence had not been neglect. It had been protection. He had believed that keeping his distance was the only way to ensure her safety, and in that belief he had carried an unbearable burden. She realized that the life she had lived, full of small comforts and moments of happiness, had been shaped by his careful hand all along. She spent hours reflecting on the man he had been. She thought about the courage it had taken to make difficult choices, the wisdom to know when to act and when to remain hidden, the depth of love that had guided every decision. She felt a connection to him that was both painful and comforting, a bond formed not through presence, but through the legacy of care he had left behind. As she continued to explore the house, she found a hidden compartment in the study. Inside were journals and notebooks filled with detailed notes about his life, the challenges he had faced, and the steps he had taken to protect her. She read each entry carefully, amazed at the clarity and thoughtfulness with which he had planned every move. The man she had loved for his quiet kindness was now revealed to her as a hero of a different kind, one who had fought battles in silence and solitude. The daughter began to take small steps to connect with the world her father had hidden from her. She reached out to people he had trusted, those who had known him well, and slowly began to build a picture of the life he had lived before she was born. Each conversation added another layer of understanding, another piece of the puzzle that revealed the depth of his courage and the sacrifices he had made. She also began to see the consequences of finally uncovering the way. Truth, there were people who remembered him, who had been affected by his actions, and who had their own memories and stories to share. Some were grateful for what he had done, some were surprised by the depth of his care, some were saddened by the losses he had endured alone. The daughter realized that the truth was powerful, and that understanding it fully required patience, empathy, and courage. One evening, She sat quietly in the living room, looking at a photograph of her father. The man she had loved for his quiet presence now stood before her in a new light. She saw not just a partner, but a protector, a guardian, and a father whose life had been devoted to her well-being. She felt tears rise in her eyes, not just for the man who had died, but for the love and care he had given so silently. The daughter also began to reflect on her own life and choices. She realized that she had inherited more than just his presence or absence. She had inherited his courage, his careful thought, and his capacity for love. She felt a responsibility to honor him, to live a life that reflected the values he had held dear, and to carry forward the legacy of protection, care, and quiet heroism that he had left behind. With the woman's guidance, she began to make decisions about her future. She wanted to connect with the parts of the world her father had shielded her from, to understand fully the life he had lived, and to embrace the opportunities and challenges that lay ahead. She felt a growing sense of strength, rooted in the understanding that her father's love had been with her all along. Even in silence, the house, once filled with the quiet weight of loss, began to feel alive with the presence of memory and love. Every object, every letter, every photograph became a connection to a man who had given everything without expectation. The daughter felt a deep sense of gratitude and a desire to honor that gift by living a life full of awareness, courage, and compassion. As the days passed, she began to speak of her father openly, sharing his story with others who had known him and even those who had not. She found that people responded with curiosity, respect, and admiration. They were moved by the depth of his care, the sacrifices he had made, and the way he had chosen to protect the ones he loved in silence. She also realized that the truth, once uncovered, had the power to heal. It helped her understand her past, appreciate her present, and prepare for her future. The legacy of her father's choices became a guiding force, a source of strength and inspiration that she could carry forward in every action and decision she made. One night, as she sat by the window watching the stars, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. The man who had died protecting a secret had given her a gift beyond measure, the chance to understand, to forgive, and to carry forward the love and protection he had offered so quietly. She felt a connection to him that was eternal, a bond that could not be broken by time, absence, or secrecy. She whispered softly into the night, speaking to a father she had never met, but had always known in her heart. I understand now. I see all you did, all you protected, all you sacrificed. I will carry it with me. I will honor you. I will live as you would have wanted me to, with courage, love, and care. In that moment, the daughter felt the full weight of the legacy her father had left her. She knew that life would never be simple, that there would be challenges and choices ahead. But she also knew that she would never face them alone. For his love, his courage, and his sacrifices would always be with her, guiding her, protecting her, and reminding her of the quiet hero who had given everything so she could live safely and freely. The days following the daughter's discovery of her father's life felt both heavy and light. Heavy because of the weight of the truth she now carried, and light because she finally understood the reasons behind the silences, the absences, and the choices that had shaped her life. She moved through each day with a sense of purpose, determined to honor the man who had sacrificed everything for her safety and happiness. She began to organize the letters, photographs, and personal items he had left behind. Each object was a story, each word a testament to his care and courage. She read through his notebook again and again, feeling a connection grow stronger with every sentence. The daughter started to see her own life through the lens of the man she had never met, noticing the ways in which he had influenced her without ever stepping into her world directly. The woman who had helped guide her through this journey remained a steady presence. Together, they shared memories and stories, speaking aloud the truths that had been hidden for so long. The daughter realized that by uncovering the secret, she was not just learning about her father. She was also connecting with the woman who had loved him, understood him, and helped protect her throughout the years. One morning, the daughter found an envelope tucked away in a drawer. It was addressed to her, written in the careful hand she had come to recognize. Inside was a letter folded neatly, with words that made her chest ache. By the time you read this, I will be gone. I cannot be with you in life, but I hope that in words, in stories, and in the quiet care I have left behind, you will feel my presence. Every choice I made, every step I took, was to ensure your safety and happiness. I could not risk exposing you to the dangers I once faced. I hope you understand that silence was my only way of protecting you. I will always love you, and I will always be with you in every way that matters. She held the letter close to her heart, tears streaming down her face. The words brought clarity, grief, and love all at once. She understood that the man she had grieved for had been present in every way he could be, shaping her life from a distance and shielding her from harm. His love was quiet, but it was stronger than anything she had ever known. In the following weeks, the daughter began to reach out to the world her father had kept her away from. She met people who had known him, friends who remembered his kindness, colleagues who recalled his quiet strength, and even strangers who had been touched by his actions. Each story added another layer to the portrait of a man who had lived a life of selfless courage and deep, hidden love. She also began to make decisions about her own future. She wanted to live in a way that reflected the values he had instilled, even without words. She wanted to act with integrity, courage, and care, honoring the sacrifices he had made. Every choice became a way of connecting with him, every success a tribute to his guidance, even from afar. One day, she returned to the small garden behind the house. The flowers bloomed quietly, and the air was filled with a sense of peace. She thought of her father and all the years he had protected her, the dangers he had faced, and the love he had carried silently. She felt a profound sense of gratitude and connection, knowing that he had been with her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She sat on a bench, looking at the sky, and spoke softly, as if he could hear her. I know now. I understand everything. I see the sacrifices, the care, and the courage you carried. I will honor it all. I will live fully and carefully as you would have wanted. I will carry your love with me always. In the months that followed, the daughter began to share her father's story with others, carefully and respectfully. She wanted people to understand the depth of his care, the sacrifices he had made, and the quiet heroism of a man who chose silence over recognition to protect the ones he loved. Her father's legacy began to touch others, inspiring them with the power of love and protection that did not require visibility or praise. She also felt a growing connection to the woman who had helped guide her. Together, they continued to explore his life, sharing memories and reflecting on the lessons he had taught through his actions. They spoke of courage, love, and sacrifice, understanding that the man who had died protecting a secret had left behind more than grief. He had left a roadmap for living with care and compassion. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, the daughter realized something profound. She had found her father not through presence but through understanding, through the careful uncovering of truth, and through the legacy he had left behind. She felt his guidance in her choices, his protection in her safety, and his love in every memory they had uncovered. She thought about the life he had given her, the quiet strength that had shaped her, and the lessons she had learned from the stories and objects he had left behind. She understood now that love can take many forms, and that sometimes the greatest love is the one that works silently, away from the eyes of the world, to keep the ones we care for safe and free. As she prepared to leave the house that had once been her father's, she felt a sense of completion. She had uncovered the truth, connected with the daughter he had protected, and learned the depth of his courage and care. She carried with her a sense of purpose, a commitment to honor his legacy, and a deep love for a man she had never truly known, but had always felt close to. The daughter stood at the gate, looking back at the house one last time. She felt a mixture of sorrow and gratitude, knowing that the man who had died protecting a secret had given her everything he could. She felt the weight of his choices, the depth of his love, and the courage it had taken to remain silent for so long. She whispered softly into the air, as if he could hear her. Thank you. I understand. I love you. I will carry your legacy forward. With that, she turned and walked away, carrying not just the story of a father's love and sacrifice, but the lessons of courage, care, and quiet heroism that would guide her for the rest of her life. The man who had died protecting a secret had finally been understood, and in that understanding, his legacy lived on, powerful and enduring. In the life of the daughter he had loved beyond measure, months passed since the daughter had uncovered her father's secret and begun to understand the life he had lived to protect her. Each day brought new reflections, new memories, and a sense of responsibility that grew steadily within her. She felt as though she had inherited not just his love, but the careful wisdom and courage he had carried silently through life. She had started to rebuild her own life with this understanding as a foundation. Every decision she made was influenced by the lessons he had left behind, the quiet bravery that had guided him, and the sacrifices he had made without ever seeking acknowledgement. In her work, in her friendships, and in her interactions with the world, she carried a sense of purpose and integrity that was rooted in his legacy. The house, once filled with the weight of secrets, now felt like a place of learning and connection. She continued to go through his notebooks, letters, and belongings, discovering new insights that had escaped her earlier searches. Each piece of writing revealed more about the man he had been, the thoughtful way he considered every action, the foresight he had employed to protect her, the depth of his love that had remained constant, even in absence. One afternoon, she came across a letter that had never been opened. The envelope was worn at the edges, and the handwriting was deliberate, careful, and familiar. She recognized it as one of the last letters he had written, intended for a time when she was ready. She opened it with a mix of curiosity and reverence. "I have watched over you from afar, and though I cannot be there in life, I hope these words bring clarity. You are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and loved more than you can imagine. Life will bring challenges, and the world will not always be kind, but remember that courage and love are tools you carry inside yourself. Use them wisely and live a life you can be proud of. I am with you always, in every choice, in every step, in every heartbeat." Her eyes filled with tears as she read the letter, feeling the presence of her father as if he were beside her. The words echoed in her mind, becoming a mantra of courage and purpose. She realized that the secret he had carried, the distance he had maintained, and the silence he had held had all been acts of profound love. And now, she was free to carry that love forward in her own life. She decided to take a trip to visit places that had been part of his life, locations he had written about, and spaces he had remembered in his notebooks. Traveling through the towns and streets he had once walked allowed her to feel closer to him, to understand the context of the decisions he had made, and to see the world through the eyes of someone who had always put another's safety above his own comfort. At each stop, she spoke with people who had known him long ago. She listened carefully, absorbing stories of his kindness, his integrity, and the quiet way he had helped others without ever seeking recognition. She learned of moments when he had intervened in crises, offered protection to those in danger, and worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure safety for people he cared about. Each story painted a picture of a man whose heroism had been invisible, but deeply impactful. The daughter began to realize that her father's influence extended far beyond her own life. His actions had touched many, often silently, and his legacy was one of courage, compassion, and quiet protection. She felt a responsibility not only to honor him, but to continue the values he had embodied. The lessons he had left behind were tools she could use to navigate her own challenges, face difficulties with integrity, and make decisions with empathy. She also connected more deeply with the woman who had been a companion to her father. Together, they shared memories, pieced together unfinished stories, and reflected on the courage it had taken to live in the shadows for the sake of someone else's safety. The woman became a mentor of sorts, guiding her in understanding the full weight of the choices her father had made, helping her channel that understanding into action in her own life. As the daughter's confidence grew, she began to reach out to her own community, inspired by her father's example. She helped people quietly, offered support without seeking recognition, and made choices guided by compassion and foresight. She found that the values he had instilled in her through legacy and example were becoming a living part of her daily life, shaping her interactions, her career, and her friendships. One evening, sitting in the garden that had always reminded her of him, she reflected on the journey she had taken. From the initial discovery of his secret, through the uncovering of the truth, to the understanding of the sacrifices he had made, her life had transformed. She had moved from grief and confusion to clarity and purpose, finding not only the story of her father, but also the story of who she could become. She realized that the greatest gift he had left her was the knowledge that love is not always visible. Courage is not always loud, and protection is not always direct. Sometimes the most profound acts of care are the ones carried quietly, without expectation of thanks or acknowledgement. And she had inherited that gift, carrying it into the world in ways both big and small. In the quiet moments, she often spoke to him in her mind, sharing her thoughts, asking questions, and seeking guidance. She felt his presence in decisions, in moments of fear, and in times of joy. Though he had passed away years before she truly knew him, she had built a connection that transcended absence. A relationship defined by understanding, respect, and love. She also began writing her own reflections, documenting the story of her father, the lessons she had learned, and the ways in which his legacy shaped her life. Her writing was intended not for fame or recognition, but as a way to process the journey she had undergone to honor him and to create a record of courage and love for future generations. In these writings, she explored the complexities of human relationships, the burdens of secrecy, and the power of sacrifice. She examined the ways in which people protect those they love, often at great personal cost, and the strength required to carry such burdens silently. She found that through understanding her father, she had gained insight not only into his life, but into her own capacity for empathy, patience, and courage. Months turned into a year. Elle stared into a year, and the daughter's life continued to be guided by the principles her father had lived by. She faced challenges, experienced loss, celebrated successes, and built meaningful relationships, all with the quiet awareness that she was living in the shadow of a man who had given everything to protect her. His lessons were woven into the fabric of her life, shaping her choices and guiding her path. She often returned to the small house, not out of obligation, but to reconnect with the tangible pieces of his life. Each visit reminded her of the journey she had undertaken, the love she had discovered, and the courage she had inherited. She found peace in knowing that the man who had died protecting a secret had left her with the tools to live fully, wisely, and compassionately. In the evenings, as the sun set over the quiet town, she would sit in the garden, looking at the stars, and speak softly to the father she had never known in life, but had grown to understand deeply. I am living the life you wanted for me. I see your sacrifices. I feel your love, and I will carry it forward. I am brave, not just for myself, but because of you. Thank you for everything. Through this ongoing journey, she realized that the story of her father's silent heroism was not just a tale of secrecy and protection. It was a story of enduring love, profound courage, and the lasting impact one life can have on another. She understood that while he had been absent in presence, he had been constant in influence, shaping her life in ways that would continue to unfold for years to come. And as she walked through the quiet streets of her town, carrying his legacy in her heart, she knew that the man who had died protecting a secret would never truly be gone. He lived in her choices, in her courage, in her compassion, and in the life she built, a life that reflected his love and his unwavering care. His story, once hidden, had become a guiding light, illuminating the path she would walk with integrity, strength, and love for the rest of her days.